Gaye. Now, first question to Lieutenant General Dua. Sir, what makes a soldier right? And why did you write this book and particularly this topic? Can you please tell our audience a bit about it?
Well, there'll be very different answers for this as to what makes a soldier right. But in my opinion, how I look at it is this. I think we as soldiers experience life and death, if I may add, at very close quarters. We see life in very different in very different dimensions than living in cities and working in corporate sectors or other fields, etc. We see death from very close. It brings about certain emotions. And if you really want to write about those emotions, it makes a very compelling story. As to why did I write this book? Well, the fact of the matter is, I actually started writing another book. I'm from Jammu and Kashmir Light Infantry Regiment, and I was commanding 15 Corps, that is the entire army in Kashmir. And with my experiences in Jammu and Kashmir, I wanted to write a book. But the lockdown happened after the COVID, the curbs were placed. And the publisher, she herself suggested to me that first, why don't you write those small stories that you've been talking to me about, stories of soldiers on the line of control, which bring out their braveries, their heartbreaks, their family stories, and so many other poignant moments that we could encapsulate, which makes a more compelling reading. So my book is 12 short stories, all my first-hand experiences on the line of control and the stories of their families, etc. Yes, of course, some of them are of me as Corps Commander. The flagship story there is about the surgical strikes, and I'm sure we'll talk about that later.
Yes, we will. Now, General Dhillon, I mean, I have been absolutely, fascinated by the title of your book. I mean, what made you write this book, and what is this title about? Kitne Ghazi aaye, kitne Ghazi gaye. I mean, it's in Hindi, the title, and for an English book, and even otherwise, what made you think of such a title?
Good morning, Jai Hind to General Dua and my co-panelists, and also to all your audience and viewers. Ma'am, just taking off from where General Dua left, and the first question which you asked is a very pertinent question. And the previous session, the ambassador was talking about Shastra and Shastra. And in our parlance in the army, we call it scholar warriors. A warrior is a warrior, and like somebody looking at me, or General Dua would say they spent their whole life as infantry officers in jungles of Kashmir or hills of Siachen and all over the Himalayas. But the fact of the matter is, I have done my MP, I have done my MPhil and PhD, in addition to having spent my life fighting the terrorists and on the line of control and everywhere else. So as General Dua said, nearly 40 years of experience of managing the very difficult situation, looking after the interest of the nation and living up to the expectations of the nation. So, scholar warrior, Shastra and Shastra, we have stories, and our stories need to be told and read. Now, the question, the title of my book.
Are we having a problem with the connection? Can you hear us?
I can hear you, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. So, ma'am, coming to the question, the title of my book being in Hindi, Kitne Ghazi aaye, kitne Ghazi gaye. It's a national bestseller from day one, and I commanded the same formation, that is 15 Corps, which General Dua commanded, Chinar Corps, the whole of Kashmir. And I was 4 days into the command of Chinar Corps. I had taken over the Chinar Corps on 10th of February 2019. And 14th of February 2019, Pulwama IED blast happened, in which 14 of our CRPF Jawans made the supreme sacrifice. And within 100 hours of that operation, of IED blast, we neutralized the module which had carried out that IED blast of Pulwama. And the leader of that module was a Pakistani terrorist. Actual name was Kamran. His code name was Ghazi. And Ghazi is a very preferred code name, a code word by the Pakistani terrorist. And since I had 7, 8, 10 years earlier in Kashmir, starting in 1988, there are a lot of Pakistani terrorists with the code word Ghazi, whom we had eliminated. And during this press conference, because for the last 3-4 days, the media was abuzz that Ghazi has carried out that Pulwama IED blast. And Ghazi was made something bigger than life by the media, especially the vernacular media. So in the press conference, the question was asked, is Ghazi dead? Now, I didn't want to give much credence to a lowly terrorist of Pakistani origin. So my, जैसे कहते हैं, दो टूक जवाब. My दो टूक जवाब was, कितने Ghazi आए, कितने Ghazi गए, परवाह नहीं, we are there, we will handle it. And this phrase, कितने Ghazi आए, कितने Ghazi गए, became very famous and viral. And since I talked about Kashmir in my book and Pulwama IED blast, Balakot, abbreviation 370, hence the title of the book is कितने Ghazi आए, कितने Ghazi गए. Thank you, ma'am.
Well, that shows the confidence of the Indian Army in treating with Pakistani terrorists. Now, Mr. Verma, you are a military historian. You have written a series of books. Your book on the 1962 India-China War is mandatory reading in the Army and the Air Force. Now, how did you go about it, the research part and writing part? At the same time, if I can add another question, at what stage of development would you say India's military history writing is?
Good morning, and thank you for having me on this very esteemed panel. 1962 book was a book which is titled The War That Wasn't. And I was actually born my father was in 2 Rajput at that time. And 2 Rajput was actually deployed in Wallong just before the war. And in fact, as a 3-month-old baby, my mother was the only lady there. The Thai Kamti Raja had actually built us a hut. And just before the war, 2 Rajput was being moved to Mathura. But then they were taken off the train at Misamari after the Dola incident, and then they were pushed back to Namkachu, where in one of the most dramatic 2 hours of fighting, we lost 282 men. 2 Rajput was virtually decimated on the Namkachu because they were wrongly deployed on the river. And that was the attack. That was the beginning of the attack by the Chinese on the 20th of October, 1962. I have grown up in a family which was torn apart because our unit was, everybody was either killed or captured or whatever. And this was a book which has been kind of festering in my system for a long time. My own career graph took me to Ladakh. My father was also commanding a brigade while I was working there with Tiger Tops. And all along, I used to, my interest in military history was beginning to develop. I used to go to some of these places. I was later also shooting for the Air Force. JRD Tata funded my first Air Force film. I was one of the few fortunate people in this country, perhaps the only one who's flown a lot of fighters, a lot of transport. So I had a lot of access to most of these places. And when we got into the Northeast also, I used to go and literally go and sit in those bunkers and let the terrain talk to me, so to speak. My father had written a book, Rivers of Silence, where he had talked specifically of 2 Rajput. But David Devidar of Alap was very keen that we do this book. I had written a book earlier with him, which was the autobiography of General V.K. Singh, which I had co-authored. And I would say the 1962 book actually, it was not an easy book to write because it's a story of a defeat. It's a terrible defeat. Not only a defeat, it was an absolute disaster. And I used to keep telling my family, nobody's going to read this, but I had to write it. And then the book was released in 2016, and I was pleasantly surprised to see the kind of reaction it has got. And today it is, as you said, mandatory reading for the Staff College for various Army units. I just visited Kenzebane last month, and it was amazing. I mean, across Sela, there was a BRO chap, he went and got my book. So, the whole thing has, then 1965 followed in a natural course of things. And as for your other question as to what level of writing there is in military history, I would say it's in its infancy because, it takes a lot of work to actually sit down and write about history. Because as General Dua earlier said, when you are in conflict situations, your perceptions and your entire thing is heightened. And every man, if there are three of us, let's say, I also filmed the Kargil War, so I know what I'm talking about here. If three of us went into a particular action and we were asked to write about it the next day, the only thing common will be the place and the date. Otherwise, it's your own story, you see. So you, as a military historian, it's difficult to weed your way through that. But we've got a long way to go, but I think we've now got some very good people. We've got Ajay Raina, who's coming up with fantastic stuff on Kashmir, and various other writers now emerging from within the army, like General Dua, General Dhillon. It's wonderful to see all this.
Yeah, thank you. Now, Lieutenant Dua, you are the 15 Corps commander. Now, when that surgical strike took place, in fact, you were the man behind the surgical strike. Now, tell us a bit about it.
Let me start with I beg your pardon. Let me begin with a disclaimer. Not much can be said about it, so I will have to limit it to what can be said about it. Whenever, I give a talk to especially to the youth, the university, the colleges, this is a small gathering here. But when I say Udi, what is the sense that evokes in all the sense that you get? What is it that you think of? I think everyone will talk of how's the Josh, hi sir, and stuff, right? I see a lot of younger people nodding. Yes, my age group. But when I think of Udi, it's the darkest day of my life. 18th of September 2016. Let us remember that is the day when 4 suicide terrorists came into our camp at Uri Bang on the LOC, and we lost 18 soldiers, 18 young lives lost on my watch. This is something that I cannot live down till my dying day. Well, this is not the first time such attack has taken place. We've had such high-profile attacks, terror attacks earlier also. But I think I was fortunate that on that very day, the defense minister landed up there and he insisted on going to Uri, late Mr. Manor Parikar. Well, while he could not be taken to Uri because the operations were on, we brought him to my office, to the ops room, and we briefed him. He asked what can be done. And I think that is the moment where we decided to turn this pain into an opportunity. The whole country was incensed, the leadership was agitated, my own soldiers wanted revenge, and we decided to turn this pain into an opportunity. And we secured, when I suggested to him, and this is what I've written in my book, India's Brave Hearts, the first story is about this. When we asked him that we would go across and hit the terrorists across the line of control, because they come in all the time and we are always adopting only defensive measures. Let's be offensive for a change. So in the next 10 days, we went across, hit terrorists at multiple locations in the terror training camps, caused heavy damage, and came back. And while we were mentally prepared to accept some casualties, I think fortune favors the brave, and we did not have a single casualty. And thank you. Thank you on behalf of those soldiers who carried out the attack, but also in memory of those whom we lost in Uri. And the last sentence I'd like to say on this is that this changed things for our country. We had drawn new red lines. We had found little space below the nuclear threshold, the card that Pakistan had been pulling all along with us, and which set the stage a couple of years later for Balakot precision airstrikes after Pulwama happened. So I think all in all that was a good turning point. Surgical strikes made a good turning point, not only for our military, but also for the country. And the last sentence I'd like to say, what was different this time was that the government took ownership. The next morning, our DGMO came in full uniform and announced not only to the country, but to the world that we did it. We went across and we hit you. We did it because you did Udi. We don't have any intention of escalating it, so escalation onus is on you. Thank you.
Thank you. Lieutenant Dhillon, you too were Corps Commander, 15 Corps Commander, And it was when you were in charge that Article 370 was imposed revoked in Jammu and Kashmir. What was your experience about it and about bringing, ensuring that there was peace during those days? And at the same time, if I can ask, for such sensitive things, as General Dua also mentioned, how much is classified information and how much is not? How much can you actually reveal and how much you cannot reveal? Please.
Okay, ma'am, the second part of the question first. How much we can reveal? Ma'am, as a military mind and also having headed the Defense Intelligence Agency, we are very clear as to what is in the national interest and what confidentiality needs to be maintained at all times. Things which are already in the public domain, we can talk about it. And if someone wants me to confirm or deny a particular rumor or a particular political statement, we avoid that. Because we do not, as military commanders or as a military people, we do not get involved into that space, which is definitely not our space. So, ma'am, we can reveal a few things. We will not reveal the technicalities, the modalities, the ifs and buts, because those can be picked up by the enemy and he can improve upon his tactics and do a similar thing again, or a thing with covering up his faults. So I leave. First of all, Jaldua will agree with me, and all the people who have studied Kashmir and followed Kashmir will agree with me. On 5th of August 2019, when the Article 370 was abrogated, at least 80% of Kashmiris did not know what is Article 370 all about. And more than 95% did not know what is Article 35A all about. And it's a fact, I've spoken to some very senior people, some people who have been in the government, politicians, writers, thinkers, opinion makers. Most of them had a vague idea, but they did not know the nitty-gritties of 370. And 35A were the limiting provisions for J&K. I've written about it in great detail in my book, Kitne Ghazi Aaye, Kitne Ghazi Gaye, with percentages, with examples as to why these two articles had to go. And it's very good that government took a very bold decision and decided that we need to do away with this. We as military commanders or as team security forces, which includes Army, Jammu Kashmir Police, CRPF, intelligence agencies, and the civil administration, we had to prepare for it, and at the same time, we had to maintain the confidentiality. I always say only 2.5 people in Kashmir knew that it's going to be abrogated. All discussions on Article 370 abrogation and how we are going to handle it happened in the Corps Commander's house, which is called Chinar House. Nobody outside the four walls of that room knew what is being discussed. So much was the confidentiality. On 5th of August 2019, when the article was being abrogated, our character Mahendra Singh Dhoni was having dinner with me. He had morning tea in my office. These were the visuals which were being shown. If such a big step is being taken and Corps Commander is having tea with the character and having dinner with the character, that means enemy could never, enemies outside and within, could never imagine that such a big step is going to take place. So nitty-gritties are written in the book as to what gave us the confidence that Article 370 should go and we will be able to maintain peace. And I can tell you with a lot of pride, we had confirmed that we will be able to maintain peace before 5th of August 2019. And 3 months after 5th of August 19 were the most peaceful 3 months in the history of Kashmir terrorism of more than 30 years. That is how we maintained peace, and we had two aims to ourselves. One is the writ of the government must run on each and every inch of sovereign territory of India. That means if government has decided abrogation of Article 370, it must be implemented in letter and spirit. And second aim we gave to ourselves was, while doing so, maintain peace and ensure no life or property, public or private, should be lost while implementing the aim 1. And we succeeded in both. So happy for it, part of history. Thank you.
Thank you. In fact, I've already been told that we are running out of time, but I have got to ask both of you a very important question. Now, Shiv Kunal Verma, you have written on Assam Rifles and a Northeast trilogy. And Lieutenant Dua, you have raised the 3rd division of the Assam Rifles. So, I mean, the question to you is that, what would you say about the questions being raised on the Assam Rifles handling of the Manipur situation? And to General Dua, what was your experience of raising a division of the Assam Rifles? Please.
See, firstly, I think the Assam Rifles, and I say this with absolute confidence, is one of the finest paramilitary forces that we've had over the last 200 years. It was the only form of governance we had post-independence. And what that force has done for the Northeast and link it and everything is absolutely outstanding. There are problems with all forces, as Assam Rifles also has had. And today, before the problem started in Manipur, about 60% of Assam Rifles was deployed in Manipur. By questioning the setup and the integrity of the Assam Rifles, I think the MLAs who have raised this have done a great disservice to the country, because you cannot start questioning anything. The majesty of governance, if that starts going to pieces, you're going to be in very serious trouble. The problem in Manipur, in my opinion, having traveled extensively in the area, including just about every corner of Manipur, it's really, right now, the situation is a bit like a black cat in a dark room which doesn't actually exist and blindfolded men searching for it. The government, whatever solution it comes up with right now, is going to be a temporary one, because we have to get serious about governing the Northeast. Right now, it's a giant ATM. There's all kinds of stuff. All these issues have to be addressed. Whatever is done now, we have to get serious about the Northeast, because if the Northeast explodes, Kashmir is going to look like child's play. Okay. General Dua, your comment.
Yeah, Assam Rifles, please. Short.
Yeah. I'll not repeat all that he said. I'll just throw a poser to you all. All of us know what's happening in Manipur. It's largely a cookie methi problem. But in our Assam Rifle unit, the same cookies and methi serve together like friends. I mean, that's something that we must ponder over. So it is the circumstances that are making what is happening. Just like I'm from Jammu and Kashmir Light Infantry Regiment, a very similar model there, a similar parallel. The same youngster who picks up stones in Kashmir and the same boy who picks up a gun in Kashmir, he serves in my regiment as a very loyal soldier. And he, incidentally, you asked me, my first book which is now about to be published, now become the second book, is about a Kashmiri who won the highest award. The only Kashmiri who won the highest award, Ashok Chakra, is Nazir Ahmad Wani. He is a terrorist who has turned soldier and who's become a hero.
Wonderful.
Wonderful. So I think it is the circumstances. You take a young man out of that environment and how his behavior will be totally different.
And Lieutenant Dhillon and Mr. Verma, what are your next books? Lieutenant Dhillon, please, quickly.
Ma'am, I am writing a book. The structure is already complete. The agreement with the publisher is already done. The book is on military leadership ethos and their relevance in the corporate world or civil society. And I think the normal name is still not finalized, but again, it will probably have a Hindi name. And the bottom line will be military leadership ethos, relevance in civilian world, basically resilience against adversity, and how do you handle situations in the military and which are applicable in civil world.
Lieutenant General Dua, I think you are writing 2 books, isn't it? There's a second book as well?
Yes. The second book is also with the publishers already. The draft is gone. It's about the highest decorated soldier in Indian Army. Naib Subedar Chunni Lal from my unit, and Brigadier Williams is sitting over here. We are from the same unit. He's been my mentor. He's speaking next. Naib Subedar Chunilal, the late Naib Subedar Chunilal was awarded Ashok Chakra, that is the highest award, then a Veer Chakra and a Sena medal. His Veer Chakra came about when I was the commanding officer in an operation when we were together. So it is going to be an interesting story to follow about the highest decorated soldier in Indian Army, and that's the second book that I'm writing.
That's great. And Mr. Verma, your next book, please.
We are just about to publish by the end of the year a 2-volume illustrated military history, which is from the Ramayana till, each book is 400 pages, till the Kargil War. And apart from that, the 71 book is now, work has started on that for Alep. And both 62, 65, and even the Siachen book, which again with Brigadier Williams I've co-authored, is also being translated into Hindi.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, General Dhillon, General Dua, and Mr. Verma.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.